Hi, welcome to Miss V and Co. I'm Miss V and my co are my plants, and you can't see my plants. So today I am talking about Patricia Briggs's Alpha Omega series. She kind of betrayed me. At least I feel wounded. So the Alpha Omega series focuses on Anna and Charles, and Anna is a new character to the series, to the world, and Charles has been there since the first book, but he doesn't pop up that often. I think he was in the first book, and I think maybe he showed up again in the sixth, but in the fourth, but only on the phone. In the fifth, but only on the phone. He doesn't show up much, is the point. And yeah, so I'm gonna first kind of go over the Mercy Thompson universe, which is where the Alpha and Omega series kind of takes place. And then I'm going to go over the Alpha and Omega books, and we'll go ahead and talk about the relationship dynamics and the characters as individuals, as well as where the series went wrong. I have a whole little note card telling me what to say. So, the Mercy Thompson universe is a paranormal urban fantasy universe. The Mercy Thompson series focuses on Mercy Thompson. She is half Native American and she calls herself a walker. She can transform into a coyote at any time. And she does a lot of ass kicking. She's got romantic interest in the form of Adam Hauptmann. Spoiler warning, I guess. And it's generally a fun series. But honestly, so I was on, Silence Broken or something, and I started it. I got like 22% of the way through. I read on Kindle, so this is how we know. I'm about 22% of the way through, and I don't want to read it. And I think it's because the Alpha and Omega series disappointed me so much that now reading Patricia Briggs's work, at least for the time being, feels more like a chore. So, I mean, I renewed it from the library. I still have the book right now, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually read it, to be honest. And I've enjoyed most of the Mercy Thompson books so far. So the fact that I'm having trouble getting to this book right now probably says something. So the Alpha and Omega series kicks off with a novella. And the novella basically, it introduces Anna Latham to the series. Of course, she's Anna Cornick for most of the series, and for the most part they call themselves Charles and Anna Smith because they're trying to protect their identities or something. But we meet Anna Latham. She is an Omega werewolf, and in this series you've got most werewolves are dominant werewolves, and they're submissive werewolves, which, like, dominant werewolves have like the instinct to protect them or something, but they're not as likely to pick fights. They're not going to try and take over the alpha position. Omega werewolves have like a calming effect. They're like, Anna in one of the books describes them as Zen alphas. They don't have the instinct to fight, to kill, to hunt as the alphas do, which makes them seem to other wolves like submissives. In the novella, we realize that Anna has been abused in her pack. She calls the Merrick, Bran, who is like in charge of all the werewolves in the United States, and the Merrick sends Charles to figure out the situation. Insta love, Charles falls for Anna, and it was overall a really entertaining novella. I mean, it was clearly focused more on meeting Charles and Anna than the actual plot, which was fine by me. I mean, I'm not really reading romances for the plot, let's be honest. Although plots in a lot of them are good, I'm just here for the characters, you know? You start with the first book, and I'm sorry I don't remember the titles of the books. They kind of have really awful titles that don't have much to do with the books, therefore they're called what they're called. They're called first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So the first book, Anna and Charles just moved in together. They don't know each other really well. You know, it's within probably a week of them meeting, but insta love, you know. So, first off, there's something wrong with their mating bond. They did the deed, but they can't mesh. And there's a witch after one of their wolves, Aesel, and Charles and Anna are sent out to try and get rid of the witch. They think it's just a rogue wolf. And in the next book, there's this council on whether werewolves should come out to the public as existing or not. And in this book, you see, there's this werewolf who has deluded himself into thinking that he is the reincarnation of King Arthur. And he's convinced that Anna is Guinevere, that Charles is Lancelot, and it's just a whole deal. It's a lot of fun. The third book, there is a serial killer, and Anna and Charles are sent to help find the serial killer because it's gone after werewolves. In the fifth book, I guess children are going missing, but mostly the book's about horses. No, the horses don't play a huge part in the plot, but oh boy, it's about horses. The fifth book is really when, not the fifth, the fourth book. The fourth book is really when things started to go downhill for me. The fifth book wasn't as bad as the fourth, but it was still kind of boring. There's these wildlings and something's after them, and Anna and Charles have to solve the mystery. So as you'll be finding, the there are a lot. Anna and Charles have to go solve the mystery, and that's one thing I'm realizing about the series is, in the world in general, is that it's very episodic. Patricia Briggs could stop writing at any time. I think she probably will when people stop reading, which on one hand means as much of like the great content as, you know, anyone could take, but on the other hand means that these series are going to dwindle into nothing because either Patricia Briggs will die and the series will end abruptly, which I hope doesn't happen, or the series will, you know, Patricia Briggs will run out of inspiration and the series will stop, or most likely, because you write what's going to make you money, and I don't blame anyone for that, she's going to write and write and write and write until the books just down goes the quality, people stop reading, and she moves on to whatever's next because she's milked whatever she can milk out of that series. So let's talk about Anna and Charles real quick, just as individuals, who they are. Charles is a dominant werewolf. He's his father's hitman kind of guy. He basically, when Bran needs a situation dealt with, Bran can't leave as often because he's in charge of the pack, so he sends Charles to take care of it. And generally, Charles has to kill people to do it. Charles has this whole must protect mate thing, which is fine and does add, you know, tension, and we'll talk a little bit later about it. I don't think it ruins the series, but in a way it does kind of play a role in the series kind of dwindling down. There are very few people that Charles is close to. It's Anna, Bran, his brother Samuel, and one other guy who we meet in book 4, but we never really met or heard of beforehand, which is part of why, you know, I feel like it could have just been a trilogy. Like, I really don't feel like it should have gone on 5 books. And I know that there's a 6th book coming out in 2021, and I don't know if I'm gonna read that. But so you've got Charles, And then you have Anna, and Anna's been abused. And in the first couple of books, she's very twitchy, very, uncertain. And she kind of gets over it. And I'll talk about that later because that does play a role in the book kind of spiraling out of being a quality book. So those are our main characters. Anna, she's the Omega. She is friendly. She is a little anxious. She has the calming energy, and she was a music major in college, and music plays like a big role in their relationship, theoretically. Um, she's big musician lady. So then their relationship. Charles wants to keep her safe, but knows that if he forces her to stay in his house like it's a cage, then she will lose the essence of who she is, and he'll no longer love her. And Anna loves Charles. Woo. um, so yeah, their relationship is fine. I don't have anything against it really, although there was this one scene in book 3 where they're like in this forest of despair. They go onto this island where they think their serial killer is hiding out, and they are like there's so much dark magic in the area that it brings people's spirits down, and if Anna were to bring her wolf to the forefront, it would protect her from the dark magic, but she doesn't. And because of the relationship drama that's been going on earlier in the book, she is convinced, she starts to feel like, yeah, oh my god, Charles wants to leave me. Charles doesn't actually want me here. I'm just a drag on him. And she goes on about this, and Charles winds up trying to force her wolf to the forefront, and their bond is broken at this point. Like he broke it by being an idiot, and they kind of have sex where everyone can hear them. And then afterwards, Anna was like, I mean, I'm not sorry we did that, but I am kind of sorry that people heard. And he's like, my wolf, he does not care. He is glad that people know that you are mine. Yet they're very possessive of each other. There's that whole, you're mine, I'm yours. And that just clashes with my worldview. My idea is that people don't belong to people. Um, People can be in relationships, but people don't belong to people. And he's like, me as a person, I'm sorry you feel embarrassed, but I also don't mind. And then Anna was like, okay. It's like, oh, are we having exhibitionist werewolves here? Like, is this a thing you're pushing on me? Because I'm not okay with that. So, yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, mainly their relationship is fine. They're a little bit exhibitionist. They're a little bit possessive of each other. Of course, there's some whole jealousy thing going on, and that's kind of a werewolf thing, I guess. Like, there's the whole must protect, no go near man folk woman, and that's fine. I know I'm saying that a lot, but like, it's fine. So where did it go wrong? After the third book, something kind of broke in the series. And the first 3 books were great. I mean, there was one scene in the second book where Charles sends Anna off with his credit cards, and he's like really rich, and he's like, spend all my money, baby. And she's like, oh, I feel bad doing it. He's like, go spend. And I know that that's like a common scene in a lot of romances, and I don't know, it just makes me uncomfortable. It's like, I don't know. I don't know about that, Chief. And so I didn't like that scene in particular, But I didn't have anything against any of the first three books. I thought the first three books were really good. I finished all of them in, I think, less than a day. And then I got to the fourth one. And there were a couple things, right? Firstly, the fourth one, there were some moments when they could have added some drama. Like there's this woman that used to go out with Charles, and Charles used to love her apparently, but she ended up marrying this other guy because she found out Charles was a werewolf and it freaked her out at first. And apparently she never really got over him, and she's jealous of Anna. And Anna's just like, oh, well, it's okay. You know, that's perfectly all right. Like, she's just fine with it. Like, first off, Charles didn't tell her that she was staying at his ex's house. He just told her that she was staying with an old friend, which she is. The woman's husband was an old friend of Charles that Charles was, really close to and still loved to that day, and he was dying and all that. But he didn't tell her she was staying with his ex. And it turns out in a flashback, Charles had loved her. He would have been happy with her. And that kind of screws up the relationship dynamic, because in the first three books, Anna was the only woman Charles had ever loved. Yet she's the only woman he could ever love. And then he's just like, nope, love Anna now, I guess. And it's like, I mean, it ruins the whole Anna is special idea. Like, yes, it makes it more realistic, but it also makes it less magical. You have to strike that balance, and you didn't really there. And not only that, but you start to realize that there's an issue with a lot of the female characters in all of Patricia Briggs's books. And it didn't bother me at first when I realized this, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I mean, firstly, a lot of the side characters are just negative. They're just negatively portrayed. It's like our main characters are these shining pillars of perfection, and everyone else is kind of mean and bitter towards our main characters, which I don't like as much. But what bothers me is that the female characters in particular tend to be treated as mean, because you've got Margaret in this fourth book. I think her name was Margaret. In fact, if you think about it, because in the fifth book you find out that Sage is a bad guy. Leah's not. Even though Leah's not a bad guy, she's not portrayed well. So you've got Sage as a bad guy, Margaret's a bad guy. You don't really meet the dancer they save in the third book. You have Mariposa, she's a bad guy. And then you realize those are almost all of your female side characters. You have Linda, who's good, but otherwise, they all kind of suck. And then you go to the side characters in the Mercy Thompson series. Let's see, consistently good female side characters. Jessie. Maybe that fairy lady who was with Samuel, maybe we can count her. Gabriel's mother and his sisters, but they're really minor and don't show up that well. And then we have side characters that are kind of shown to be bitches. You've got Ariel, who is sometimes nice. Sometimes there's like a truce going, but most of the time it's like, Ariel doesn't like me because I'm a coyote. You have Mary Jo, and she's just bitter and doesn't like her. And then there's Honey, who like for a book was friends with Mercy and then all of a sudden hated Mercy again. Like, she hated her, they were friends, and then she hated her, and she's just shown to be a diva. You've got Marsilia, the vampire queen, who's supposed to be, unadulterated evil. And And then you realize most of these female characters are supposed to be kind of hateful and bitter. It's like, why is it that books, even books written by women for women, have such terrible examples of female friendship? I mean, females can be friends. There's Monica in the Alpha and Omega series. She's nice, but again, like, you just don't have as many good female side characters, and that's not my main issue, but it's definitely an issue. Um, but moving on with this fourth book, which I remember was called Dead Heat. Um, you also have a plot that mainly centers around characters who count to me as side characters. The plot does not focus on Anna and Charles as much. It seems like Anna and Charles just happen to be there most of the time. See, children are being taken and replaced with changelings, and bad luck is happening, and somebody wants to kill the two grandchildren of Charles's friends. Okay, first off, issue with the children. They don't act like children. The teenage character is fine. I don't think Patricia Briggs does a terrible job with teenagers, but the two children, come on. One of them, the book basically replaced a personality for him with watching TV and sometimes spouting exposition. And the other girl, because she has witch blood, she's all like, "Whew, I know it is." She's like a clairvoyant child or something. She's like a child genius. And I hate that type because you never let them act like kids. Nor do you really let them act like adults. You just kind of let them act like conduits for exposition and plot. So the kids didn't really have character. The mother figure spent most of the time freaking out and being asleep. And their father spent most of his time talking about horses. And that's another issue is the horses, but let's do one thing at a time. At the end of the book, the characters who grew as a result of the plot were the side characters that we're probably never going to see again. And, Anna and Charles didn't really learn anything. The only thing they got out of it was horses, which aren't going to be particularly important to the plot ever again. And then you go on to the fact that the book focused on horses. You were 85% of the way through the book, and we're at a horse show. We're at a horse fair. And the entire time you're expecting something to happen because it's about the point in the book where we should be having our climax, and absolutely nothing happens. We just have to sit there watching the horse show with our main character because horses. And they're using a bunch of fancy horse speak that I don't understand. I'm not reading a werewolf paranormal romance urban fantasy series because I know about horses. I'm not a horse girl. I've never been a horse girl. This series is not focused on horses. Why is this book so obsessed with horses? I hated it. And then let's move on to Anna and Charles in this book. And this is, I think, the main thing that went wrong with the series. In the first 3 books, our main characters, Anna and Charles, are still getting to know each other. They're still getting comfortable in their relationship together. All that is kind of taken away in this book. They're used to each other. Their relationship is stable. The only thing that comes close to relationship drama in this book is that Anna wants a kid, Charles ain't so sure. And the only thing that happens with that, because they're too mature and reasonable to argue, is that Anna's like, "Hey, I want a kid. I want to figure out how I can do that." And Charles is like, "No." And Anna's like, "Okay, we can talk about it later." And that's it. Like, there's no point when Charles is wondering if their relationship is right for them, or if Anna is wondering if Charles can give her what she wants in a relationship. There's no moment where they question their bond. And that's been a huge part of the last 3 books, especially the first 2. And even the third one was focusing a lot on how Charles managed to fuck up their bond by not being communicative enough. And so you have this mix of the plot focusing on characters that we don't care about and horses, and Anna and Charles not having any real relational tension. Not only that, but in the first 3 books, Anna's past was relevant. There were points that sent Anna into a panic that made sense. It just added to the angst, and I was fine with that. But in this book, it starts to feel like, no pun intended, we're beating a dead horse. There's a moment where Anna is questioning a fae, and in order to throw her off, he transforms so that he looks and smells like the person who abused her in the past. And she starts panicking. And then she realizes it's not really him and she's fine. But still, it seemed pointless. It had nothing to do with the plot. It was just, oh no, I am traumatized. And it's like, can you give her some character outside being traumatized? This is when I started to realize that Anna doesn't have as much of a character outside of having been traumatized. She's just nice, and then she's like, thanks to Charles, I know how to kick ass now. And it's like, that's nice and all, but being badass isn't a personality trait. It can be. Being able to defend yourself is not a personality trait, because let's be honest, Anna is not a badass. So then you realize the first 3 books, it felt like Anna had more depth than she did because her past was relevant. And now that, it's not as relevant anymore, suddenly she doesn't have a personality. But even more than that is we're circling back to this whole Anna was abused in the past thing to add some semblance of angst back into the series, but the angst is gone. And we're trying to make Charles angsty by having like his old friend be dying, but in the end he's just like, humans die and it's sad. I'm sad that humans die, but it's like, no, I'm sorry, it just didn't hit. The 5th book was not as bad, but it was still kind of boring. There was one part that I thought was really, really interesting, and that's when Wellesley, the wildling, Anna finds out what's kind of making him crazy, and it's a curse, and she manages to kind of go into his head using her Omega powers to try and fix it. Anna's starting to have ambitions like maybe going back to school at some point, and we stan. But even so, there's no drama between Anna and Charles. And it's just because of how important Anna and Charles' relationship was in the first 3 books, it's setting me up for something that I just don't get in the next 2. Beyond that, the next 2 definitely kind of have, here's our killer of the week, let's solve this problem. And also, some of the bad guys in the 5th book just happened to be people who abused Anna in the past. Let's just dead horse. Get it? And it's like, okay, come on, really? The point in I think it was the dreamscape or something, when you were inside Wellesley's head, I thought that was really cool. If it had stretched on any longer, it wouldn't have been very cool anymore, but I thought that was a really neat idea. We finally meet like a skinwalker, which I feel like we only had that in the book because people keep on thinking that Mercy is a skinwalker, and Patricia Briggs wants to be like, no, Mercy's not. That's an evil skinwalker. Mercy's a good guy, and she's not a skinwalker. She just turns into a coyote sometimes. And I get that, but I didn't feel like there was really any more character development for Anna and Charles, and they're who I'm reading this for. So I don't know if I'm going to go for the 6th book, but that's kind of where I went wrong. You start off as a paranormal romance urban fantasy series, and you try and end the series as just an urban fantasy. There's no longer any relational tension, which is what kept me interested through most of the books. So now you've taken away the part of the story that I was mostly interested in, and you've really turned it into more side characters, I guess more exposition, more plot. But I don't want more plot. I want more character dynamics. So yeah, I think this book is starting to spiral into its death. I'm not saying that Mercy Thompson is too, but I am saying that I don't want to read the next book. I probably won't. I mean, it's the one when Adam's ex comes, and I don't know. Just firstly, the whole jealousy plotline kind of upsets me to begin with. It can be very emotionally taxing for me to read those, not because of personal experience or anything. It's just emotionally taxing for me to read. Um, so that would be a lot for me to get through, and also so chances are I'm not going to read the next Mercy Thompson book. This might be the end of my journey with Patricia Briggs. I might pick up the Mercy Thompson series again. Maybe I'll reread the first 3 Alpha and Omega books. But so far as this particular series goes, I think I'm done. Anyway, have a great day.